What if I told you that one of the most famous historical epics ever made is packed with shocking mistakes, strange behind-the-scenes stories, and bizarre historical inaccuracies? Today, we're diving into Braveheart 1995, the legendary Mel Gibson film about Scottish hero William Wallace. You might think you know this movie, but wait until you hear these 10 weird facts. From historical errors to on-set accidents and casting surprises, Braveheart has more strange secrets than you could imagine. So, let's journey back to medieval Scotland, but with some very weird twists. Historical inaccuracies everywhere. Braveheart is celebrated as an epic tale of Scottish freedom, but historians point out that almost everything in the film is historically inaccurate. For starters, William Wallace never wore a kilt. Kilts weren't invented until hundreds of years later. The face painting was also from an earlier Celtic tradition, not Wallace's time. Even the love affair between Wallace and Isabella of France was impossible. She was only about 9 years old during Wallace's lifetime and didn't even meet him. Mel Gibson openly admitted that the movie wasn't meant to be historically accurate, but rather entertaining, and it sure was. Mel Gibson didn't want to star in it. Believe it or not, Mel Gibson almost never played William Wallace at all. At the time, Gibson felt he was too old for the role and wanted to stay behind the camera as director. The studio, however, refused to fund the project unless he agreed to star. Gibson reluctantly accepted, and the role became one of his most iconic performances. Interestingly, many younger actors were considered, but the studio thought Gibson's name would sell tickets. It's strange to imagine Braveheart without him, but it came very close to happening. The battle scenes were filled with accidents. The massive battle sequences in Braveheart looked epic on screen, but filming them was dangerous and chaotic. Extras were often injured during the shoot because the fights were so intense. In fact, several men suffered broken noses, sprained ankles, and cuts from real weapons. Some of the weapons were supposed to be blunt but still caused injuries. Mel Gibson even admitted that keeping control of thousands of extras in full costume was nearly impossible. Despite the risks, these scenes ended up being some of the most realistic and memorable battle sequences in movie history. The Irish army helped film the battles. To stage the giant medieval battles, Gibson's team needed thousands of extras. Instead of hiring actors, they struck a deal with the Irish army, who supplied soldiers from the reserves as background warriors. These men brought their own discipline and stamina, which made the fight scenes look authentic. Sometimes, though, they got carried away and actually hit each other. Without the help of the Irish army, Braveheart would never have been able to achieve such scale on a relatively modest budget. It's one of the strangest collaborations between Hollywood and the military in film history. Wallace's sword was massive. One of the most iconic props in the film is William Wallace's massive claymore sword. In the movie, the weapon is so large it almost looks unrealistic. The prop sword used by Mel Gibson was over 5 feet long and weighed nearly 6 pounds, incredibly heavy for an actor to swing around during long fight scenes. In fact, some historians argue that a sword of that size would have been impractical for real medieval combat. But on screen, it created a powerful image, making Wallace look larger than life and unforgettable as Scotland's freedom fighter. The blue face paint was inspired by the Picts. The striking blue face paint worn by Wallace and his men is one of the most iconic visuals in Braveheart. But it's historically inaccurate. The practice actually came from the Picts, a Celtic tribe who lived in Scotland centuries before Wallace. The filmmakers used the idea because it looked visually powerful and intimidating. Strangely enough, historians note that Wallace's real soldiers would have worn simple chainmail or leather armor. But Gibson wanted a bold and memorable look, even if it wasn't true to history. And in the end, it became one of the movie's trademarks. Fake mooning almost got them banned. One of the funniest and weirdest moments in Braveheart is when Wallace's army moons the English before a battle. While hilarious on screen, this scene was nearly censored in several countries. Some regions considered it too offensive for theaters and threatened to cut it. Surprisingly, Gibson fought to keep the scene because he believed it reflected the rebellious spirit of the Scots. It's a strange mix of comedy in the middle of an epic war film, but audiences loved it, and today, it remains one of the most memorable parts of the movie. The film nearly bankrupted Mel Gibson. Getting Braveheart made was not easy. The movie cost about $72 million to produce, and studios weren't convinced that audiences would care about a Scottish historical drama. Mel Gibson had to personally finance parts of the film to get it completed. At one point, he risked his own financial future to make sure it happened. Luckily, the gamble paid off. Braveheart became a box office hit and won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. But it's weird to think the film that defined his career almost ruined him financially. Cameos by Gibson's family. Several of Mel Gibson's family members appear in Braveheart. His father even helped inspire some of the passion for Scottish history that drove the project forward. Some of Gibson's children were also seen as extras in crowd scenes. Directors often sneak family members into films, but in Braveheart, it added a personal connection for Gibson. It wasn't just another movie project, it was something deeply tied to his own life. Fans who look closely can even spot these cameos during the chaos of the massive battle scene. It changed Scotland's tourism forever. After Braveheart was released, interest in Scottish history exploded. Tourists from around the world flocked to Scotland to learn more about William Wallace and the battles portrayed in the film. The Wallace Monument in Stirling saw its visitor numbers skyrocket, and the film sparked new interest in medieval Scotland. Ironically, most tourists didn't realize how historically inaccurate the movie was. But it didn't matter. Scotland benefited hugely. Braveheart may not be the best history lesson, but it put Scotland on the map in a whole new way.